Well, for number one, let's look at fasting. Where do we find fasting in the Torah, in the Bible? Well, we find it on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur was a time, V'inisem es nafshosechem, God tells us, and you shall afflict your souls, or you should, or you should be able to eliminate that connection of physicality and be able to bring it as close to spirituality as possible. The first place in the Torah is when it comes to Yom Kippur. That's when you should fast. Why does God tell us to fast? Is it I mentioned the first translation of afflicting oneself. Is that something that you're doing to be able to punish yourself, but what are you doing it for? Or possibly we need to be able to look at it and say, why is God telling us this? Maybe there's another element, not that He wants us to deprive us of something, but rather it could be that the things that we are so used to are depriving us of another element of that we don't get unless we fast. So that's one important place which we'll get back to of where we see fasting takes place in the Torah. That is, by the way, the only place where the Jewish people are commanded to fast, which is on Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the year. It's not just referred to as the holiest day of the year, it's referred to as Shabbos Shabboson. It's the Sabbath of all Sabbaths within the year. Now, if you think about it, it's the Sabbaths of all Sabbaths in the year. On Sabbath, a fundamental part of Sabbath is eating. That's what you do. You have a family meal in the evening, Friday night. You have a family meal in the morning after services. You have a family meal at the end of the day for dinner on Saturday. That's full of eating. But then God tells us the Sabbath of all Sabbaths is a matter of when you're not eating. That's Yom Kippur. And we'll get back to, that's where originally we see a concept of fasting. Rabbinically, there have been other fasts that have been instituted. For example, the second most important fast for the Jewish people is called Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. It occurs in the Hebrew month of Av, which generally occurs in July. It's a 24-hour period of fasting where it's a time for mourning. It's a time for mourning historically that day, and specifically there's a 3-week period before that. It's a 3-week period which has never been a time period of fortune for the Jewish people. For example, the first temple was destroyed, the second temple was destroyed in 70 CE, pogrom started, Spanish Inquisition, most recently you're talking about the bombings in Buenos Aires. There's this, you look throughout history, I would say there's biblical remnants to this fast, although it was rabbinically instituted when the spies came back from spying out the land, when the Jews were in the desert. They came back, and what did they do? They cried to Moses and they said, "This isn't a place for us." And God tells us, He says, this isn't a time for crying. If you want a time for crying, I will create a time for crying. And that's where the 9th of Av came into it later. During that time period of where we weep and we mourn historically of tragedies that have happened within the Jewish community into Jews. Those are the two I would focus on. There are others as well, but the two most important ones, one is going to be biblical Yom Kippur. Second one is Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which was rabbinically instituted.